Well, first of all, good morning to all. It's a pleasure to be here and to be finally presenting at this conference. Well, I would like to start kind of just remembering and like how this idea came up to my mind, because the title is a little bit confusing. It is two different topics that we might be very confused to look at. So, to be honest, it took me some time to put this idea as organized as possible so it can be properly communicated. And that is why I am going to share a little bit of the conception of the idea. Immunology as a science itself has always caught my attention because its study is critical to human survival. Nowadays, it is a cutting-edge biomedical science because its advancement will soon lead to the major breakthroughs in science. Because we're talking about cancer and all of immune disease that are currently and commonly the most dangerous for our health. So, as we are, and also as we all are now familiar using these complex terms in immunology with vaccines and everything, we all became used to this. So, I thought it was a great idea to use this topic as an analogy and to catch some revealing lesson from it. The topic of that Congress was perfect to explore metaphorically a current hot topic in immune memory research, and use it as an imagery to reshape and reimagine our concept of adaptation. Through that process of literature review, I came across with various peculiar imageries that made use of immunology concepts to illustrate diverse topics of sociology and anthropology. So as we are gonna see here, I came up with basically 4 topics. The first one made by Donna Haraway in 1991, that she basically used the topic of immunology to describe and to illustrate a form of government. Because of some of the things that we're gonna see later. Schindler in 1988, he used the concept of immunology to have a conception of he was talking about something like foreign policy. He was using the body as a nation or something like that, and the intruders as the foreign people that were coming. And also, as we can see here, that when immune defenders encounter cells or organisms carrying molecules that say foreign, the immune troops move quickly to eliminate the intruders. So we often see the immune system as a protective barrier between disease and ourselves, right? So the concept of warfare and many other things is being really popular through that literature. But most of these concepts were rooted on an incomplete understanding of immunology, where we were very used to see the intruder as something that was only meant to harm and couldn't cause any good. Okay. So, I'm going to introduce the concept of self and non-self. So there's an appear in 2012, he used this concept of self and non-self as both separated and contrary topics, because he was talking that one cannot be together with another one. But in 2012 also, Moulin, she added a comment on the paper, and she introduced a new concept called selfhood that kind of reconcile this concept together, and instead of being self versus non-self paradigm, she uses selfhood as a concept. Okay. So to begin, I would like to get some basic concepts in immunology clear. Immunity is defined as the ability of an organism to resist or protect itself from a particular infection, and it involves 2 mechanisms: innate and adaptive immunity. Being innate immunity, a rapid response to the pathogen, but non-specific. Okay, so the innate immunity is non-specific, but it is a faster response. But the adaptive immunity is specific, but it takes a little while. So, okay. So, why is this important in the context of the ongoing pandemic? Well, Current research indicates that adaptive immunity plays a major role contributing to the control of SARS-CoV-2 in both non-hospitalized and hospitalized cases of COVID. As we can see in this article published in the journal Cell, we can see that the adaptive immunity plays a major role and actually prevents non-hospitalized and hospitalized cases not to be developed further. And, okay. So, as we can see in adaptive immunity, we basically are going to talk about immune memory because some of the research or the earlier research that we saw in the literature were pointing at some cases as Africa because they were suffering like bigger waves as we were suffering in this part of the world. And that's why, and that was probably because they have already suffered the wave of MERS in 2002, I guess. Yeah, around that age. So, what we do with the imagery of immunology? So we used to celebrate victories over smallpox. So we have often used, as I already told you, the picture of like immunology is a battle against something. And well, but the truth is that immunology is a science recently institutionalized. Although such entities as macrophages, lymphocytes, antibodies, and antigens had been identified earlier, it was until the mid-60s that the concept of an immune system as such existed. So there is a new paradox that emerges, and it is that the battle against a disease is won with the help of the same disease. And we often reach this concept with vaccination or natural immunity. And well, and as we can see, we're gonna start to wrap up here, maybe, because the main concept of the main idea of this is that can be summarized in this phrase, basically, because we were facing new waves of new variants through this month, and when we saw the new variant, the Delta variant, the Omicron variant, we all became concerned because the vaccine efficacy was going down. And also, we thought that we were going to get a new vaccine, new development, and start all over again. But there is one concept of immune memory that it is very important to remember. And as we can see in this paper that it was published in the eBiomedicine journal, if I'm not wrong, T-cell responses against SARS-CoV-2 persist after 1 year in patients surviving severe COVID. So there's one thing that is called the T cells, and they are part of the adaptive immunity. And their major role is to remember the pathogen and to act against it. And that slower immune response, even though it is slower, it is highly specific to the pathogen. And as we can see here also, it was a paper that talked about those who had the COVID-19 disease had better immunity and vaccine-induced humoral response and reactogenicity than those who didn't have the prior COVID disease before the vaccination. So, although we are seeing new cases again, the situation is not as bad as last year, and that is because of these guys, basically, the T cells. Because the fact that we are allowed in our immune system to remember a pathogen and to use it for our good and to turn it for something good, it is what gives us resilience, quote unquote resilience in a level of immunology. So, because they choose not to forget but to remember, and also because although the intruder, the coronavirus, attacked us fearfully, the resilience demonstrated by the T cells stand up against it, turning an infection into protective and hopefully long-lasting immunity. So as we picture this as an analogy, we all have gone through difficult times these last couple of years. It's been rough physically, mentally, but I will suggest today and make an appeal so we can reimagine adaptation. So while we remember the tough times and experiences, mistakes that we made, we remember how we have been able to go through them. And I am sure that if you are here, it's because you already have succeeded. And I encourage you to also remember that good times and memories, to remember those good times and memories, because they are going to bring back to you strength and purpose to continue the journey. In doing so, we can reconcile the paradox of self versus non-self in our lives, embracing both of them, the good and the bad things that we have gone through, and it will certainly force us to reconsider immunology's contribution to the metaphysics of human identity. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question for immunology meets anthropology. So I know you talked about adaptation in the immune system. But I know you've also talked about the emerging field of institutionalized immunology.
Institutionalized? What do you mean?
So do you believe that the actual field, like you discussed how the immune system is an adaptation in itself, but do you think that the field of immunology is a human adaptation?
In some ways, it is, but like we cannot be like totally absolute in science, as you can see. And specifically in biology, it is very hard to do so. And as you're saying, like if immunology it is adaptation or not, from a biologically evolutionary perspective, it might be. But if you don't have or don't share that world vision, you can see immunology just as the system design or somehow self or intrinsic in the human being to protect from other like foreign objects. Yeah, and it is adaptive. It is adaptive.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a blanket question for everybody. I'm curious about what you found most surprising in research and how, if it does, how your research has affected you personally.
Oh, I thought that my idea was kind of like out of the line, but when I found and I searched more literature, I saw that there are many individuals like that were interested in this topic, and the research papers that I came across were from some very prestigious institutions, and were actually theses of doctoral degrees in concepts of biological anthropology. And they were kind of using this concept of immunology to explain or to compare it and illustrate different social movements, different political things. And that was kind of interesting because I would like to further this like topic and probably like for a publication, because I saw that there are many things to be done in that field. I mean, I personally, I like also always to present in like full science, do science, but as this congress was like more liberal arts focused, so I just wanted to explore more. Yeah.